Despite spring training getting off to a disastrous start, maybe Chris Getz and Will Venable are the right guys to lead the White Sox back to glory someday, and I'll discuss why on today's episode of Locked On White.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert at SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the FanSided Network. And also, I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And also follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Well, The Athletic may have stopped covering the White Sox regularly, but Cody Stavenhagen wrote an excellent piece last week detailing why Will Venable took the Sox manager job. And I want to finally discuss that, why you should feel confident in him leading the clubhouse and maybe Chris Getz running the front office. Then the White Sox got blown out again yesterday. Let's discuss some added concerns that could be a precursor to another historic losing season. And finally, it's Way Back Wednesday. I want to go over some of my favorite opening day starters in honor of Davis Martin making his case yesterday for getting the ball on March 27th. Okay, so obviously things are not going well during the first 4 games of spring training. Kind of makes you wonder if Chris Getz can actually construct a major league roster. However, it is spring training. The games don't count. The air is being hit. The ball is being hit in the Arizona air where, considering dryness may not allow it to travel far, it's still kind of hard to maybe spin the ball as much as you'd like, at least outside. When Chase Field has its dome on there, obviously the ball can travel a little bit better, but still pitching is always behind in spring training. And you're starting to see that with your Chicago White Sox, although the hitting is way, way behind anybody's pitching when they're facing these 4 teams. So you can get a little concerned. And I've seen it in the comments, a lot of fans being like, oh man, this team's going to win like 35 games. Let's pump the brakes. Okay. There's still variance that we have to watch out for of why they could win maybe 60, although we're getting some early warning signs that it's probably going to be maybe a 45-50 win season, and I'll get to that in the second segment. But, however, you watch or listen, since there's a lack of games being on television, you do wonder why the heck did Will Venable decide to take the Chicago White Sox manager job with, again, how talent deficient this team is. And a lot of it is the economic reasons. Jerry Reinsdorf is going to lose a lot of revenue with the CHSN debacle. And you can tell that's kind of playing into the economics of what this payroll was funded to be. But why the heck then would he leave an ideal situation in Texas? I get that, why people are kind of like, you really did leave that job? Because he was the assumed heir apparent to take over the Rangers clubhouse once Bruce Bochy decided to retire again. He's had impressive apprenticeships to prepare himself to be a big league manager. He's worked for Theo Epstein when he was still running the Cubs front office, then joined Joe Maddon's coaching staff and, works for Ross too for a season, but then goes to the Boston Red Sox, works for Alex Cora, and then he finally goes to the Rangers to be Bochy's right-hand man, who Bochy might be one of the best managers of all time. He's got 4 World Series rings to back it up. So you think this Princeton-educated former big league player would easily pass on taking over the White Sox, especially coming off a record 121-loss season in 2024. Yet, here he is. He's running his first spring training as the White Sox manager. He's even just being frank and honest when it comes to, like, what do you think? What's going on? Well, we're figuring it out, guys, because that's really all this season can be about. But I think people do have to get over the shock because Venable has, again, he's thoughtfully answered why he took the job, whether it was at his introductory press conference or at the winter meetings. But still, you've got The Athletic, who, remember, have 2 beat writers for the Cubs, but no longer regularly cover the White Sox, with this headline: the White Sox are coming off baseball's worst season. Will Venable signed up anyway. That was their headline. And just a few paragraphs down in this, Cody Stavenhagen's piece, he literally has the line, why exactly are you here? That's in the piece. And folks, this is what I wanted to talk about on last Friday, but I kept pushing it back with other more immediate news. So I'm finally focusing in on this now. But go back if you have a subscription still to The Athletic. And lately they have been breaking a bunch of news about the White Sox. It was John Greenberg breaking the Justin Ishbia news. But to even have this, why are you here? First, yes, it's a fair statement. The White Sox are a are a hot mess of an organization, and they deserve every bit of skepticism and cynicism that comes their way. But people do seem to forget they're still classified as a major league team. And also, why not get in on the ground floor of potentially building something great, especially you are basically building it up from the ashes. This isn't a rebuild. I agree when Keith Law was on the Sox Machine podcast. This is a build, like a literal build, because of how far behind the White Sox were. I get in the context they were the 2021 AL Central Division champions, but that was a lot of getting other guys' other teams' best prospects, trading off assets. If you really want to sustain success and not ever be in the situation again, you got to hit in the draft. You got to hit an international free agent signing. You got to be able to develop these guys, because not only can they be the core of your team, but then you can also trade them for pieces that can help you put you over the top. But also, I want to make this clear. This isn't a segment that I'm slamming The Athletic. In fact, well-written piece by Stephen Hagan. What I want to cover is going through Stephen Hagan's work. You come across actually more comfortable knowing Venable has a great chance at being a good manager, and might I see him and Getz being the ones that actually pull off the most extensive rebuild in the history of Major League Baseball. So first, it sounds like actually Getz had a well-thought-out process to find the team's next manager, and here's an excerpt. The early stages of the White Sox interview process featured a writing portion. Grady Sizemore, the team's interim manager, replaced Grifol midseason and expressed interest in staying in the post. But given the horror show that was 2024, Getz wanted the team's managerial search to be exhaustive. The White Sox started with a list of more than 40 names. Sizemore would later end up on Venable's staff. The writing phase featured specific questions about the game, about management style, about culture. Getz, a Michigan graduate, and other members of the front office read over the responses. So did outside independent advisors. Quote, "There wasn't a right or wrong answer," Getz said. "It was for us to get a better understanding of how they organize their thoughts, how they view certain parts of the game. Through all that, it was very obvious that Venable really was able to break things down and make it easy for the reader to understand who he is and how he plans on being successful as a major league manager," end quote. So the only thing, though, I got concerned about that was outside independent advisors. Where have we heard that before? I mean, think about the Bears situation that is going on right now. Bears. But, what? Like, that got me a little... But then again, Getz actually had to bring in that guy from the Navy SEALs to help him convince owner Jerry Reinsdorf to just make a bunch of these front office changes. So in this case, I'm all for it. Also, the next graph I'm about to share also had me coming away thinking, my gosh, Getz understands the modern game better than his predecessors, Kenny Williams and Rick Hahn. Here's the excerpt. "In a way, the franchise's dismal state was one of the few things Venable found attractive. The manager's ultimate responsibility is navigating the 162-game grind, but Getz also sought a partner who could assist in bolstering the player development system, recruiting free agents, and reshaping the team's entire identity." Quote, "The manager's role, in my opinion, has become bigger than it used to be," end quote, Getz said. Understanding the modern game, you're right, because the manager role has to be one part HR manager, making sure that clubhouse is comfortable for all the guys to want to come in. To basically, you don't want them obviously in kumbaya, but you do want it to be somewhat harmoniously. You don't want it to be like it was under Pedro Grifol when it was so dysfunctional. The second is obviously, yes, getting them through the 162-game grind, getting all the players to be prepared to play the game in front of them. But a lot of it is setting the standard of, what type of baseball should we be playing? That's a big thing. And then that is getting involved in the roster construction. That isn't, butting heads with the front office, like something out of the movie Moneyball. It's being partners. And also, how did Getz exactly get Venable to sign up for the job? Here's how Stephen Hagan describes it. The in-person interview unfolded at Tridita, an upscale Italian, sorry if I butchered it, but Tridita, an upscale Italian restaurant inside the St. Regis Hotel overlooking the Chicago River. The restaurants and the water are two of Chicago's greatest perks. Getz, doing some salesmanship, figured he'd show off both. In all his interviews, Getz made a point to be transparent about the organization, both its problems and its progress. Quote, it was important for us to really paint the picture of where we're currently at and where we're headed, Getz said, end quote. I'm going to skip a few paragraphs down. Now the connection with Getz was grabbing Venable's attention. The two crossed paths as players, but had little prior relationship. The more Venable listened to Getz describe the organization's under-the-hood work, data, performance science, game planning, advanced scouting, you name it, the more serious the discussions became, he took the job. So that's another thing. Again, when you look at Getz, maybe he's getting it because these are all things that Will Venable should be involved in. He should be involved in helping make sure, and especially since he is this Princeton-educated, forward-thinking guy, telling the data analytics department, this is what we need. The performance science, this is what we need. This is how we need to be game planning. This is how we should be going about our business. Didn't have that under Pedro Grifol. And Stephen Hagan Works point out how the Sox got to this place. He also pointed out some of the good things Getz did once he got the job, hiring Brian Bannister as a pitching director. Also pointed out some of the bad things Chris Getz has done since he's got the job. Obviously setting up this team for historic failure, like bringing in a ton of Kansas City Royals players Getz was familiar with, because gosh darn it, the clubhouse had to get a better culture. Gosh darn it. How about you get a manager that figures out how guys should work and communicate well, and maybe even a guy who actually played in the big leagues. So if he says the team is bleeping flat, he could understand when that is actually happening. Not, oh, I'm going to make this comment to charge up the troops a year and a half too late, and when an ace basically shut them down, like what Pedro Grifol did in the Kyle Bradish situation. And here's where I get encouraged, because most of the guys the Sox have brought in this offseason either have no Royals ties, they have ties to assistant GM Josh Barfield from his days with the Arizona Diamondbacks when he successfully, helped develop talent, or Venable himself, like Martin Perez or Owen White. Heck, even tapping into the coaching staff's ties to the Angels isn't the worst thing, considering Brandon Drury and Matt Thaiss at least can still provide more to the lineup than, say, Martin Maldonado and Mike Moustakas. And don't get me wrong, I actually like Mike Moustakas. Actually met him. I've had dinner with him. His wife is lovely, was very, very nice to my sister. There's a family connection there. His wife was just obviously tremendous to my sister when she was battling cancer. So, I like that. But at the time that they brought in Maldonado and even Mike Moustakas on the non-roster invite, you could tell that their glory days were well past them. Whereas in the case of Drury, he was hurt last year. But prior to that, he was a very productive hitter. Matt Thaiss is at least a professional catcher that's not going to be an automatic out, because that's what Maldonado had become. Like, great. He helped tutor Corey Lee, but he was literally hitting under 100 for most of the time he was with the White Sox last season. It was, an offense that was so bad, you can't already have then added automatic outs. So you get to see that Getz has admitted this franchise has major problems, and rather than continue to do business as usual, he's recruiting people to come in and help develop the last baseball club that is behind the times. Because that's really what it is. Again, it's a build, actually. Building a baseball club that is the last that was still stuck in a game that is well evolved past what happened in 2005. Because that is what the White Sox have been operating on. And it's also a sign that Getz understands what a big league manager should be doing in the big picture. Again, it can no longer be about pitching changes and filling out the lineup card. It should be about helping the front office, again, establish that brand of baseball. The entire organization should be playing from rookie ball all the way to the big league club. And that's what a lot of the successful organizations should do. And it should be about getting a manager who can actually analytically look at the game and not just always go on gut. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with still going on gut. But, not everybody can be a Billy Martin, that type of stuff. And I think it's also embracing, if you have a bad manager, you will get bad results. And you and I just lived that with Pedro Grifol, who might be the worst manager I have ever seen in a Sox clubhouse. And I was around for the I was alive for the Terry Bevington days. I can still remember those very vividly. But if you could bring in a manager who is at least net neutral or a plus WAR manager, then you are going to start winning on the margins. Because that's the other thing that's happened in the modern game. You've got to win in the margins. And since the Sox do not spend to overcome their weaknesses, they have to get better in the margins. Although it's not really showing right now in spring training, as spring training has not been going well, at least games-wise. Let's discuss two more concerning trends that could be a preview of another historic losing season, and let's discuss that next on Locked On White Sox. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keeping you feeling fuller longer. And personally, I love the no shells variety. It's a perfect grab and go snack for busy days. And I got some, right here, as I've just showed, as my wife and I were trying to eat more heart healthy. And I was actually munching on some of these tasty, wonderful pistachios. Told my wife, hey, give these babies a try, since we've been trying to, incorporate more of the heart healthy eating. She took one bite, literally grabbed the bag out of my hand and down the rest of these no shells wonderful pistachios. She loved them that much. Also, these, especially, like, I go with the roasted and salted. They got tons of other flavors, but it's got the perfect blend of roasted and salted, so you don't feel thirsty after eating a handful. It's a great quick snack too, and with the no shell options, I don't have to clean them up around my desk here. But if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein providing all 9 essential amino acids. Get snacking, get cracking, the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. One moment. Sorry about that. You ever get that, little frog in your throat and you're like, woo-hoo. Just had to take a quick cough there. Again, welcome back into Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't get the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms, so make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. So clearly the Sox spring training, at least exhibition games, they have not gotten off to a great start. Kyle Teel hitting a home run off of Roki Sasaki might actually be the highlight of the camp. Might even be the highlight of the season. Okay, a little sarcastic there. And also, it was in a simulated game. I got a write-up on it, though, on SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the Fansided Network. You should check it out because Teel absolutely crushes a ball from Roki Sasaki in his first simulated game. First at bat, too. Because that is, hey, the White Sox lost out on Roki Sasaki. At least they didn't commit organizational negligence by making the presentation. But it does mean they are going to see a lot of him in spring training, and not just in games, but also because, again, since the Sox and the Dodgers share a facility, they can share basically, hitters for simulated games, stuff like that. And Teel stands up, and boy, did he rock it. I mean, absolutely no doubt about it. He kind of did the cool strut off. I mean, that was pretty neat for a top 40 prospect to absolutely crush a home run off the top prospect in all of baseball. But holy cow. Everydayers, you may have heard me recap the clown show moments recently against the Cubs, the Royals, and the Rangers, and now add a second straight blowout to the list, and this time it's from the Rockies. The Sox peer in suckage. I mean, it's the Rockies and the White Sox that are projected to potentially not win, not even come close to 60 wins. These are brothers in arms and being terrible. And the Rockies absolutely destroyed them. And yes, it is a spring training game. And the blowout portion really did not come until the 8th inning, although the Sox did get down 6-1 before then. But it still wasn't like a full-on, oh my gosh, please stop. Please stop. He's already dead. Simpsons, moment. And yes, at the same point, we always have to remember this is still spring training. Pitchers are always a little bit behind than hitters. Pitching in a non-dome Arizona ballpark is always hard, as, it just, sometimes you just can't get enough spin on what you want to do, that type of stuff. So that being that it's still spring training, I do want to add 2 concerns or 2 warning signals that I have to the list of spring training could possibly be a precursor to another historically awful season rather than just run-of-the-mill bad. The first is the offense, again, is just not generating anything through these first 4 games. And I get toward the end of the game, you got the non-roster invite guys in there and minor league pitchers getting a taste of facing stiffer competition. So I get, if you got guys in later in the game, they're probably never going to help you in the big leagues because they're there, like Braden Montgomery. He's just there because they want to give him a taste of facing stiffer competition. He also was not able to play in the complex league at all with that broken ankle injury last year. So you're just trying to get him into some game action. I get it. But for yesterday, outside of Zach DeLoach, and even then he might be counted on at some point. So let's say outside of Cal Mitchell, Nick Maton, and Oscar Colas, and even then Oscar Colas might be counted on. So basically 2 guys. Everyone who got in a bat is likely going to make the big league roster, has a shot to make the big league roster, or will be counted on to provide a contribution later in the season. And the Sox, with that lineup, basically just 2 guys that you're like, well, he's probably not going to make the big leagues. Maybe Omar Narvaez. No, he played 2 days ago, so never mind. 2 guys. The Sox produced just 5 hits. 5. And one of the runs the Sox produced in that 14-3 defeat was on a wild pitch. Pretty much a pitching error was needed to get a runner across. And after getting 8 hits in the first spring training game, the Sox have just 15 over the past 3. Not great, Bob. Also, this is supposed to be this get-on-base lineup, and I saw something that did concern me a little bit early in that Rangers route. Mike Tauchman, his OBP makes him the ideal leadoff man in this get-on-base strategy. And then you probably put Luis Robert Jr. second. And I talk, every day has probably heard me talk about that on a previous episode. But first at bat, Sox are down 9-0. First at bat, swings at a pitch like he's trying to get a 9-run homer to make up the deficit. And I just fear these holes that the Sox are going to dig themselves into, because it's going to happen, is going to get everything out of whack then. And as I said in the previous segment, the only way the Sox are going to have to try to win in the margins, because again, they're not spending to basically close their margin for error. So if you get these things out of whack, like Mike Tauchman, who should be taking pitches. Now, granted, if you see your pitch, obviously swing and drive. But otherwise, he should be taking pitches, trying to get on base, keep the line moving. And plus, the diversity of base runners was not there. This on-base strategy. The Sox had 5 walks yesterday, with 2 of them coming from Lenyn Sosa. And the White Sox have just had 16 walks all of spring training and a .270 on-base percentage. And again, you're facing some guys that are just going to be career minor leaguers or just going to be up for a brief stint. So try to work some more walks there, guys. And again, the logic is the pitching is usually behind the hitting. So you get the fear that these disciplined hitters are going to fall for the pitchers, big league pitchers. And Beefloaf, every day is probably remember. He was on the show when him and I were having that discussion on Chase Meidroth. These pitchers do try to find a way to get you to actually get the bat off your shoulder. So the strategy is you should be just swinging at your pitches to drive. Otherwise, work to get those 4 balls and move the line. And you're starting to see the Sox kind of being fooled. I even saw Chase Meidroth take a couple swings at balls where it's like, man, I heard it's really hard for him to get that bat off his shoulder. He's trying to get to get on base, and he's very selective when he hits. So I don't know if getting down early, kind of put them in this, hey, we got to get it all back. It's just not going to happen in that way. And only the Twins are off to a worse start hitting with a team average of 165. The Sox team average 177, 608 OPS. And I get it's 4 games, so that's just why I label this as a precursor or warning sign. But it says something when even the Rockies radio broadcast is wondering how the heck are the Sox going to score runs. The other cautionary symbol is Justin Anderson absolutely got blown up in the 8th inning. Got destroyed. Gave up 8 runs, 7 of them earned, and could not get an out. And this is supposed to be your closer, folks. And his spring training ERA right now is infinity. Literally. It's so high that it's just a dash. Check the box score. It's infinity. 7 hits. 2, along with a home run, and that he gave up as well. And this was to a deep into the Rockies going into their bench at this point in the game. It's the 8th inning. This should be getting your work. Get in, throw some pitches, and get out. And he looked terrible. And think about it. Spring training is designed for pitchers to work themselves into game shape because it takes a little bit longer to get ramped up. But this was just shades of what he did best last year. Give up runs. And give up runs at the most inopportune time to basically put the game out of reach for the Sox. 29 runs allowed, 26 earned in last season in 53 and a thirds innings. 5 blown saves, 2 losses charged. I just don't see what the Sox are seeing in this guy to feel like he should have even been tendered a contract, let alone be the favorite to be the closer. 284, 380, 358 slash line with hitters for the opposing hitters with runners in scoring position. 345 BABIP in those situations. Late and close situations. Late and close, according to Baseball Reference. 319 average, 832 OPS hitters had. Although here's an anomaly. 2 outs and runners in scoring position, 189 average with a 500 OPS and a 259 BABIP. So maybe that's what they're seeing. especially when you look at his production in the ninth in terms of hitters average off of him. It was 209 in the ninth compared to 293 in the eighth. But still, that outing was rough to listen to. No TV on either side, only because, I don't know, Sox own their own station. They can run every spring training game if they wanted to. But there's no TV on either side, so it was only available via Rockies radio. But man, you could hear the contact coming off of Anderson's pitches, and it was loud. Just not a good first impression for Anderson. Well, Davis Martin made his first case to be the opening day starter. 2 innings of work where he struck out 2 and allowed a hit. And since it's way back Wednesday, I want to go over some of my favorite opening day starts next, and we'll get that next on Locked On White Sox. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox or wherever they get their podcasts, as this show is available on all major podcast platforms. So Davis Martin sounded like, he had a sharp first start. Again, sounded because the game wasn't on television on either, if you have the MLB TV package and you don't get blacked out. There was no Sox, there was no Rockies coverage. Again, the Sox own their own station. They could choose to run these games if they wanted to. Anyways, the one thing to remember about the first 3 games, that's the other reason why, again, I just keep saying it's warning signals. James Fegan of Sox Machine on that podcast pointed out, first 3 games featured outings by extra starter Jared Shuster, the Rule 5 draft pick likely being stashed in the bullpen, Shane Smith, and a reliever sort of being given consideration to be a starter in Tyler Gilbert. So that's the other reason why you should not be like, oh my gosh, totally overreacting yet when it comes to looking at the performances, especially as the starters. And they were only going 2 innings. These are not the guys that are going to be in the opening day lineup likely. And a lot of tinkering is going on. So again, for those that are jumping in the comments saying, oh, this is a 40-win team, I see the possibility. Trust me, I've been saying it. But let's not base this off of 4 spring training games or just even the context of who are these guys like out of minor league, major league. But it was nice to hear Davis Martin pitch well as he makes his case for being the opening day starter. And since it's way back Wednesday, I want to go over, 4 of my favorite opening day starts, whether it's a home opener or opening day. We'll get into that context in a second. And what I'm still bitter about. So obviously, never have I been more happy to be loud wrong about Garrett Crochet. Because I remember on writing SouthsideShowdown.com that was a terrible idea to make him the opening day starter. I mean, think about it. He had pitched 73 innings before, missed 2022 with Tommy John surgery, and was also having injuries in 2023 that basically limited what he could do. There was even talk of sending him to Triple-A to work and stretch out even more to be a starter. And then suddenly gets the opening day honor. And I'm like, what the? Oh my God, this is going to be terrible. Goes out and duels Tariq Skubal with 6 strong innings of one-run ball. And I've never been more impressed. And it was a great preview of things to come. Obviously, Dylan Cease opening day start in 2023 was probably one of the few bright spots of that disappointing season. Ruins Houston's ring ceremony with a 3-2 win, allowed just 2 hits and 1 run in 6 2/3 innings. Clearly, Mark Buehrle's 2010 opening day start will always stand out based on that amazing fielding play he made along with the 7 strong innings of shutout ball. Now, another personal favorite of mine is actually a home opener. It was the home opener to start the 2024 season. It's actually the first and only home opener that I've been to so far. I might try to make it down for March 27th. I got to see how I can convince my wife about that. But, the reason why it's a personal favorite is, first of all, here's the funny thing. I was in college and I had class that day because I think it was like a Thursday. Yeah, it was a Thursday. Had class that day. A couple, days before, I was like, man, I'd really like to go to a home opener. I'd really like to do that. And, I'm at Marquette, so there's not a ton of Sox fans, friends. A lot of them are Cubs fans or Brewers fans. So I'm like, you know what? Call him the old man. Not only did I call him the old man, my dad, but also my mom wanted to go. Because I called him and said, like, hey, is it all right if I ditch class and we go to see the Sox play the Royals? And not only did they support it, they paid for the tickets. And we had a great time seeing the Sox destroy the Royals 12-5 as Esteban Loaiza towed the rubber that day. Now, the one I have a resentment towards was the first game at New Comiskey, just because my dad did get tickets, but for himself. I was 10. He gets tickets for himself. Would not take me. Still bitter about that. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout spring training. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. So I'll be back tomorrow with Courtney Finicum of Baseball Isn't Boring, as she needed to reschedule from yesterday. You were thinking, she needed to reschedule from today. We were going to record. Just did not work out. So we're actually going to record, I think, later tonight to have it out tomorrow. So those that were like, hey, I was expecting to see Courtney Finicum, she'll be on tomorrow for tomorrow's episode. And we'll talk about what she's looking for in spring training and how the female fan base perceives Mike Clevenger's return. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding Will Venable and Chris Getz being the duo who possibly lead the team back to being competitive someday. Some early warning signs of a historically awful season, and way back Wednesday. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dub, or at Locked On Sox. Or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.